the president and CEO for the North San Diego Business Chamber. And this is the second in a series of webinars that we're going to be doing. And I'm really excited today. We have 5 of our members on. 4 of them are very well-known and recognized marketing gurus in the region. And then we have Todd Kern with us from chamber member Front Wave Credit Union. So let me tell you real quickly what we're going to do. Each one of our presenters from the Port, DW, MIG, and Push Marketing, they will be doing a 15-minute presentation, and then Todd will be introducing each one so you know who they are. At the end of all 15-minute presentations, we will have a moderated Q&A at the end, because I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions since everybody's focus is just a little bit different. If you have a question, please put it in the chat feature, and Todd will pull the questions from chat, and you can put them on throughout the entire webinar. But we will hold all questions until the very end. We're also recording this, so we will have a copy of it when it's all over. So without further ado, I'm excited to introduce to you Todd Kern, who is a marketing executive with Front Wave Credit Union. Todd, take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Deborah. Good afternoon and welcome. We want to thank all of you for attending today. As Deborah mentioned, COVID-19 is revolutionizing the way that businesses will be done, and it's forcing all of us and all our organizations to adapt and find creative ways to stay connected with consumers and with our members, our consumers in the market. COVID-19 has really forced businesses to shift to a virtual environment in an already shifting economy. So today, as Deborah mentioned, our panelists are going to walk us through some ideas and strategies that can help all of us and help you create powerful narratives with your customer base, look at different marketing strategies and tactics, leverage digital and social media, and how to flip your business delivery 180 degrees, all while keeping it very human-centric. And so without further ado, I will introduce our first presenter. And as Deborah said, make sure, answer the questions. I'll try and corral them as we work with technology, and we'll have Q&A at the end of each panelist. But again, without further ado, I'll introduce our first speaker, Michael Brown. Michael is the Vice President, Marketing and Communications at the Port of San Diego. Michael is a creative, entrepreneurial, marketing and operations executive with experience in both private and public sectors. He's a diagonal thinker, blending linear and lateral thinking, using data to fuel creative solutions. Michael is currently, as I said, the Vice President of Marketing and Communications for the Port of San Diego. We're honored to have Michael with us today to illustrate ways that we can create powerful connections during this challenging time and illustrate how we're all connected. Good afternoon and welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Todd, and hello, everyone. Welcome to my home. I'll just keep this casual and light and hopefully impart some useful information to you. So as Todd said, I am with the Port, and I also have a background in the private sector and was with Fleischmann-Hillard, Starbucks, and Nike for clients. And I also launched 2 small businesses myself. So I think some of my experience is valuable to many of you, I hope. So I'm going to talk a little bit about creating narrative stories that are authentic and that will create connection between you and your customers, potential customers, clients, with your vendors and your employees. So during this pandemic, I think the phrase that we have heard most is that we are all in this together. And let me advance my slide here. Let's see. Slides are not so important, but you can see me, right? It looks like that's what's up. So, so the notion of that we're all in this together is the phrase that we're hearing most often. And at this point now, 7 or so weeks in, I think many of us are starting to tune out that phrase, and it's really time And certainly now there are examples that we can all point to of how we are walking that talk. So I think you would do well to do some marketing, especially social media marketing, that illustrates how we're in this together. So, for example, I live in Little Italy, as I think I mentioned, and I don't cook, but during this pandemic, I thought I would take up cooking. And so I thought I would make brownies from scratch, realized that I was lacking an egg, went to my local neighborhood deli/market, thinking I could buy an egg there, buy eggs. They don't have eggs. And at the checkout counter, as I was paying for the things that I did buy, I mentioned that I just needed one egg. And a fellow who works there behind the deli counter tapped me on the shoulder, gave me an egg so I could go home, make the brownies, which I did. And I returned the next day with half of the brownies for the crew. And what this story illustrates, what I hope it illustrates, is the notion of creating connection. And what did not happen in this situation, but that what could have happened, what probably should have happened, what I would counsel you to do when you find yourself in these situations, is that you then take those moments of connection and create a narrative. And it is authentic because it really did happen. And so what they could have done in this case is they could simply have taken a picture of me with the brownies and then posted it to their Facebook, their Instagram, and just told a little story about how they had created connection with a customer, and then the people who see that then see themselves in me, and then the goodwill that the company created in this case then extends to everyone who sees the post. People then feel a connection, and whether or not they're a customer of that small local business, they certainly will have goodwill toward that business. They'll likely shop there, and it creates connection between and among people. Perhaps like in your neighborhood, here in Little Italy, every evening at 8 p.m., most of my neighbors and myself, we go out to our balconies and our patios and we bang pots and pans, we yell and scream. And sure, yes, primarily this is for healthcare workers, but I would submit to you that it's as much about each of us creating a moment of connection with each other, with our neighbors, as it is about creating appreciation for the healthcare workers. So the point of these stories is for you to look for these moments in your life, right? So in your business life, in your personal life, during this time, and look for opportunities to create stories that you can then retell, primarily on social media because it's free, or there's certainly very limited cost, and create content that connects with people in doing that. I would not advise that you spend cash now unless you are creating something new, something that cuts across the grain, and certainly nothing that is woe is me or about the challenges you're facing. All of us now are facing challenges. So create content that has a message of opportunity about how fortunate we are to see our world through this new lens and the excitement that this time creates for us. And everything should be done with a touch of empathy and never wanting to elicit sympathy from your audience. So tone is really important. There's a national insurance company that has some really effective ads that are very much of the moment. They show the insurance company's staff in a virtual meeting, something that all of us can relate to, right? And they're humorous. And so they're of the moment. They clearly reflect that the commercials are of this time, of this moment, of this pandemic. And they also, they're very real because they're so relatable. One of my key messages is for you to do things. I would encourage you to do things that are selfless, right? So whether you provide goods or services, I would encourage you to figure out how you can give something away of value to others now. Again, that creates connection, creates loyalty, creates awareness, creates goodwill, and it can drive new revenue or increase revenue at another time. I think everyone knows of Estee Lauder. So a global brand started, this is a great story for small businesses. So it was started by the person who was a housewife who wanted to put food on the table, keep her home warm in the winter. She was from New York, and she started out literally going door to door, and she offered product samples. And then for every purchase that was made, there was a free gift with purchase. Now in 2020, product sampling and free gift with purchase is not remarkable. It certainly was when the company was launched. It's now a $13 billion company. So the point there is that, and especially now in this COVID era, as you can figure out ways to give things of value to other people, the benefit will accrue to you and your company over the longer term. So with the Port of San Diego, we're undergoing a cultural shift. Randa Coniglio has been the CEO for about 5 years now. And our new culture is one of being others focused. And Scripps called us a few weeks ago asking if they could borrow one of our solar-powered electric vehicle chargers, which they needed to power a drive-through COVID testing station. And certainly it was an out-of-the-box request, and it's also an example of doing something that was others-focused. So, of course, our answer was yes, without hesitation. And why was it yes? Because when you're others-focused, the answer to the question from someone who's in need, of course, is yes. If we were able to do it, we're going to do it. And the marketing opportunity here is that at some point, we will pitch this story to local media. So again, at virtually no cost to us, we're telling a story that's of the moment, that creates awareness for the port, for Scripps, for our missions, and for how we're cooperating with one another. And I hope the takeaway for you there is that you look for opportunities to illustrate how you're cooperating with your employees, with vendors, and how you really are walking the talk of the notion that we're all in this together. My last example is a small business. There's a family from San Diego who live in Santa Barbara, and they have a family-owned seafood business. More than 90% of that business was wholesale to restaurants. And of course, virtually all of that has evaporated. And so they have done a pivot, and they have 2 restaurants, which of course are takeout and delivery. But their big pivot is they launched an online store. They have worked out the logistics. They can ship their product wholesale across the country, next day delivery. There was an article on Tuesday in the New York Times, very similar story, different company. It was about a New York-based company, but this company in Santa Barbara, really it's the same story. And the point there is, look for ways that you can make a pivot. Can you offer your goods and services online or virtually? And tell your story. Your website should reflect the moment, right? So there should be a message on there about how you're addressing COVID with your employees, with your customers, and put a face to your company. So the Santa Barbara company, for example, they now have a photo of the family. So they're putting a face with the company, and they are illustrating how they are committed to their employees. They've laid no one off, and they're telling that story. So the point here is to tell these stories. So I'm sure most of you, maybe all of you, are doing these things. The difference is that you must tell these stories, and social media is a very effective way to do that. And don't hide your light under a bushel. Now is the time to tell these stories about yourself. It may feel self-serving, but the stories can be told in a way that they are about someone else. So back to the example of the egg in the deli, right? So the way they could have told that story was to make it about the customer, in this case, me. Not that I want the story to be about me, but the point is you can tell your story by telling the story about someone else. And because you're a part of the story, your role in that also gets told. that's, I think I've covered a lot of territory, and I think that's about the total of my time, but I'm happy to answer questions later after you hear the next 3 informative presentations. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael. That was great. I think, you know, it just yet another iteration of always tell your story, no matter what we're going through, right? Because each story is something that humanizes our business and really connects to the consumer. That was great, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Todd.
Next up, I want to introduce Dave Woods, who's the founder and strategist at DDUB Inc. And he's going to, Dave Woods is the founder of DDUB Inc., a San Diego area consultancy specializing in customer, user, and employee experience. Hey, Dave, there you are.
How's it going?
He's praised as a friction fixer. He empowers his clients to transform their marketing products and services into helpful, smooth, meaningful experiences that generate results. We're really pleased to have Dave shed some light on the importance of human-centered marketing, continuing that theme. Welcome, Dave.
Hi, Todd. Thanks so much. And as Todd said, my name is Dave Woods, and I'm here to talk to you about the entire concept of human-centered marketing. Now, I'm certainly not the only person who uses that term, but for me, the idea was inspired by the world of human-centered design. We've all seen how design has become such a powerhouse in recent years for both businesses and customers alike. I mean, after all, just look at the success and the level of transformation that has been achieved by design-driven companies like Apple. Yet, as best I can tell, this idea of human-centered marketing, which I believe holds this exact same transformative potential as human-centered design, hasn't been as broadly adopted, at least not yet. So today I want to explain to you what it is, how you can make the human-centered marketing shift, and also why it's so important in times like these and beyond. It's not just for times of crisis. So to do so, I've created a series of slides for you. Let me share my screen, activate those. Great, here we go. When we say the word marketing, what do most people think of? Well, overwhelmingly over the years and the conversations I've had, it seems that the popular definition is that marketing is promotional communication. In other words, things like selling, advertising, public relations, conversion copywriting, email marketing, and social media. And accordingly, we measure the effectiveness of those things through activities and metrics like ROI, return on investment, conversion, sales, profits, revenues, new customers, and increased market share, to name a few. And these are all great things. We need to measure these things and do these things, but can you see what they all have in common? If you take a step back and look at it, they're all organization-centric methods and metrics. They don't really touch on the needs. It's all about benefit to the company and not so much about benefit to the customer or the wants and needs and goals and feelings of the customer. And I think that's unfortunate for 2 reasons. One is that there's more to marketing than just promotion. If you go back to one of the classic business school definitions of marketing, it's the 4 Ps: product, price, placement, and promotion. So yes, promotion's in there, but it's only one of the 4. The other 3 are critically important, especially right now in the midst of this pandemic with the unemployment and the way our supply chain and buying methods have totally been disrupted. Price and placement are critical to focus on right now. But beyond that, I think the more important reason is that we really need to think about the context of this moment. In this pandemic, sadly, people are scared and hurting. We know they're losing their jobs, they're losing their businesses, and sadly, worst of all, some of them are losing their lives. And so to put it bluntly, the last thing that most people want to hear right now is a tone-deaf sales pitch from any of us. Instead, I think this is a time for the world of marketing to take a cue from the world of human-centered design. The hallmark of human-centered design was a shift from organization-centric to customer-centric in everything that's done. So I'm going to use examples from 2 industries to illustrate this for you. First, the auto industry. Used to be you just made a car, but decades ago there came a point where we started to consider ergonomics and safety more seriously. So we ended up with seat belts, and then better seat belts, and then airbags, and then fuel efficiency standards. Not only did it increase future market opportunities for the automakers, but it also made people's lives better. It literally saved a number of lives. Same thing for the world of computing and software development. In the old days, computers were just for the technical experts and the programmers. But through the advent of the graphical user interface, through the rise of the practice of user experience, through the transformation we saw about a decade ago from keyboard phones to touchscreen smartphones, and all the things that they've allowed us to do. Look at how much easier it is to hail a ride now than it used to be to get a taxi. Yeah, there's been pluses and minuses, but on balance, it's not only led to some of these tech companies becoming some of the biggest in the world through human-centered design, but it's also made the lives of people a lot better and allowed them to take advantage of computers whereas before they couldn't. So do you see a theme here? It's that human-centered means that everyone wins. It's not just the organization winning, it's the customers winning too. And I'm not advocating that you leave the organizational-centric attitudes or metrics behind, far from it. Do you think that Apple really regrets, with all their success, having human-centered design as part of what they do? No, none of the design-driven companies have. All in all, human-centered companies outperform their peers who are non-human-centered. They have happier customers and employees. They have higher revenues and profits. They have stronger, more beloved brands. I've even just yesterday read some research saying that in the Great Recession 10 years ago, that they had a higher likelihood of surviving the recession when you focus on things like customer experience and user experience. So can you see why I'm so excited by the concept of not just human-centered marketing, but human-centered everything? And so today, I don't just want to talk about concepts. I want to give you 4 practical, actionable things that you can begin to take away today and implement into your marketing strategies and tactics right now. And the first has to do with empathy. What made human-centered design possible and so successful was empathy, putting yourselves in the shoes of your customers. So going back to that slide about organizational measurements, what kind of things will we measure instead for customers to see whether they're happy or not and what benefits they're gaining from what we do for them? Well, there's a number of them, but to name a few, you can measure things like awareness, happiness, and satisfaction, things like reviews on Yelp and other methods, loyalty, willingness to spread the word. But there's one measurement that I really think people need to focus on quite a bit these days, which is you need to find out if and how your customers are hurting. If they're hurting in any way, if they're experiencing any pain points, any friction in their lives, soothe those pains, solve their problems, and I guarantee you, they will be so grateful to you, they will become a loyal customer for life. Your promotion will become easier because the word of mouth marketing will increase. They'll do it for you. It's just a great thing for everyone involved. So focus on finding pain, solving pains. You'll have business, steady stream of business for years, even during the ups and downs. So how do we measure these kind of things? We do it through surveys, interviews, analytics, usability testing, and journey mapping, to name a few. The only thing about a lot of these I just mentioned is they sometimes require an expert well-versed in the research method to implement it for you in a proper, neutral way. You may not have the time or the budget to do that right now. So here's a really simple one. Just ask your customers a question. You've got mailing lists, you've got Facebook pages, whatever your method is, use those contact methods, write them and say, hey, we're thinking of you and we want to know, how are you doing right now? Are you struggling with anything? Obviously, make the question relevant to what your skill set is. If you're involved in, say, food, the restaurant industry, groceries, make it food related, but find out what those pain points are that they may be struggling right now in the midst of this crisis. Some of them will reply, give them the option to reply anonymously or privately, of course, and I guarantee you from that, you will glean all kinds of empathetic insights that'll help inform product pivots, how to shift your pricing or your distribution, come up with new products and services, and of course, how to change your marketing, your messaging, which brings me to point number 2. I would suggest to you, and this hits on things that Michael said really well, I would recommend that you transform your messaging to be about your customer, not you. Michael talked about the power of storytelling. Storytelling, in my opinion, is probably one of the biggest arsenals in your marketing, chest of tools to help increase not only the effectiveness of your marketing for you, but the effectiveness for the customer. Kind of along with what Michael said, I like to think of marketing not so much as you telling your own story, but helpfully filling in the blanks in your customer's story. So there's lots of examples I could give of this, but I'm going to use a very COVID-19 specific example, which is how many of you have seen your inbox bombarded with letters from CEOs in recent weeks? Probably a lot of you. I've gotten a lot of them, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is many of them look like this, and I don't believe in public shamings. This was a screenshot of one I received, so I don't want to ever shame the company, so I blurred and cut some things so you don't know who it is. But this is a long thing, a long letter to receive in your inbox. I measured it. It's 1,000 words. And the bigger problem with it is that most of it was about the company talking about itself and not enough about what the company was doing for the customer. So there is an alternative. This is not a sales pitch. It's just something I can share because I helped make it. So I have permission to share it. One of my customers is a local school district. And obviously, school districts have a lot of audiences they need to cater to at any time, but especially in the midst of this pandemic with the shift to distance learning. So we've got parents, teachers, staff, community members at large, students, et cetera. So they came to me and said, hey, how can we make our COVID-19 communication better? So I helped them develop a page on their website with warm, friendly, brief language done by audience. That's the key. One of the big keys of human-centered is personalization and customization. Not all your customers are the same. So it's not a matter of doing A or B or C. It's A and B and C. You need something for everyone. So I talked to the school district, asked them, what are these pain points? What are they asking you about? We came up with a list of frequently asked questions. And let's say you're a parent, you want to know about breakfast and lunch for your student, you just click it, boom, there you go, 2-3 sentences with everything you need to know. Isn't that better than having to read through a 1,000-word letter to find the information that's relevant to you? It's much more helpful and user-friendly. So quick takeaways for messaging: embrace storytelling, talk about the customer, not your organization, keep it brief, keep it plain spoken, avoid the corporate speak and acronym soup, and of course, personalize. Third thing I want to talk about today is the power of building community. Michael also touched on this. I think community building is a really powerful thing. I know it helped me in my business. And I think there's something really timely about this that goes beyond COVID-19. Before the pandemic happened, and over the last few years, I think we've all seen that we've become a little divided and isolated. We've heard about epidemics of loneliness, which I think are partly because of people interacting through social media rather than coffee shops. We've heard about mental health issues. We've seen political polarization. There's a lot of reasons why we've been driven apart rather than together. And now on top of all of it, well, here's this pandemic where we're stuck at home. And so building community is huge. There's so many ways you can do it, but I'm going to give you 2 examples today, 2 ideas. One, if I were you, I would recommend starting a YouTube channel. If you're a restaurant, for example, and this can apply to any industry, but open source one of your most popular recipes and put an instructional cooking video on YouTube for that recipe. Now you may be thinking, if you're a restaurant owner, oh my God, I don't want to do that. Once they have the recipe, they won't come back into the restaurant when this is all over. No, on the contrary, they will so appreciate this loving, generous gift that you were able to bring that flavor they loved into their home when they couldn't make it into yours, that they will have loyalty and come back in droves once your restaurant is able to reopen. And again, plenty of application to other industries as well. Second idea, start a Facebook group, or if you're more B2B, start a LinkedIn group so that you can interact with your customers and they can interact with each other. That's the thing. Promotion is great, but it's a one-sided communication method. True communication is two-sided. It's talking and listening. So not only can you interact with your customers, but they can interact with each other. Plant the seed now while we're separated in the digital world. And then here's an idea. When we're able to reopen, and put an invite out to that Facebook group, host a party for them at your restaurant, your storefront, your office, whatever your case is. Those relationships that were fostered in the digital world will transfer to the real world. Our communities will be stronger, friendships will be formed, and your customers will remember that gift that you gave to them. They'll be loyal to you, loyal to each other. Not to sound cliche, but the world's a better place. So try and think of creative things like this, again, where everybody wins. The last one I want to talk about is something that's really kind of near and dear to me, which is the topic of accessibility. I want you to embrace accessibility. I'm going to phrase this with a question. Do you want to alienate and repel up to 20% of your customers? Of course not. But that's exactly what you do if you don't embrace accessibility. And by accessibility, yes, I'm talking about people living with disabilities and other issues. The misconception about people with disabilities is that there's just a few of them and it's just people who are blind. But in reality, approximately 20% of all people on Earth are living with a disability. It goes beyond vision issues. It's people with hearing impairments, motor skill issues, cognitive impairments, dyslexia, autism, motion sickness. The list goes on and on. There's many different forms of disability and issue that people are dealing with. And accessibility can help make them feel equal and give them equal access to all the other things we have. If we extrapolate this 20% across the world population, that's 1.55 billion people worldwide. To put this, make an analogy that's kind of marketing relevant. If those people with disabilities were the monthly active user base of a social network, they'd be the 4th largest social network on Earth. Clearly, this is a market opportunity and an audience you don't want to ignore for your business. So, things that we can make accessible, yes, we know through the Americans with Disabilities Act about physical storefronts, environments, and products, but also the new frontier over the last 10 years is digital accessibility. Yes, people with disabilities, including people who are blind, can use your websites, apps, PDF documents, email newsletters, webinars, videos, and more if you make them accessible. And this is critical to do right now because the number of lawsuits against businesses have been skyrocketing in recent years as a result of digital inaccessibility. So I could give lots of examples, but I'm going to give 2 quick wins today. Video is becoming huge. It's hot in marketing right now. You must closed caption your videos, not only for people who are living with hearing impairments, but the rest of us benefit from it too, because we can still hear the important marketing audio of your video, even if we're in a busy room where we couldn't hear the audio otherwise. Another thing I see a lot is when it comes to the graphic design, the formatting of marketing messages. I'm seeing this trendy thing in social media posts and websites where it's a little, really tiny font on a light background, thin font, white, you can't read it. And again, it's not just bad for the person with a disability, none of us like it. So make those fonts bigger, make them bolder, make them darker. So trendy becomes so much better. Bottom line about accessibility, it's a win-win-win. You'll gain customers and revenues, you'll reduce your legal risk of a lawsuit, but more importantly, you'll literally be making the world a better place for all of your customers with disabilities and without. Everybody wins. So that's my presentation. Thank you so much, and I will stop sharing. Well, my cursor won't allow me to, so someone may need to stop for me. Can't see my cursor for some reason.
Hey, thank you, Dave. Thank you so much. I think that's a great lesson yet again on continuing that theme to grow your tribe, build your tribe, and also to leverage some of our untapped segments and some of that untapped potential. Next, we've got Marley Ehrenfeld. She is the Principal Chief Creative Officer for MIG. Marley is an acclaimed Chief Creative Officer specializing in brand development and engagement strategies. Hey, Marley. Marley is highly decorated with several Emmy and Telly Awards for her work. She inspires positive change through her focus on creating integrated marketing programs for both public and private entities that need a brand boost. So we've invited Marley today to show us how to think differently and how small businesses can show large acts of resilience during difficult times. Great to see you again, Marley.
Thank you, Todd. So let me go ahead and try and share my screen here.
I'll kick it over to you.
So thank you very much, and I'm glad to be here. This is going to be fairly brief, and I think you're going to hear a common theme with everybody who's spoken, which is basically creating loyalty, creating memorability during a time when we're all isolated and a time when you're not in full form as a business. I owned a small business for 23 years. I sold it 3 years ago. I thank heavens that I am not in that position right now. I also came from a family that built a small business into a large business after 46 years and then sold that company a year ago. So my heart is always with small businesses and people that are trying to make a go. So let's talk about the seriousness of this. We know that 50% of the gross domestic product comes from small business. We are a power force, but it is hard. It is difficult with the Amazon nation, with the Google nation, and yet for live, work, play, for society, for the GDP, small business is more critical than ever. So I think we're going to be definitely seeing and looking for help, partnership, and a way to make us relevant as we move forward. So what do we do? How do we have this resistance? I've done a bit of reading also on what happened to business after the 1918 Spanish influenza. Small business was rocked for sure, and yet many emerged. And it was, interestingly enough, cities that had a slower rollout, that practiced safe distancing, that used masks, that had rules in place and even allowed businesses to open on a slower basis, they did better. So I thought that was interesting to see that. And you did see the emergence of different small companies, no surprise, including companies that had products like Lysol. So you can see the birth of new things, but there's things we must do now in order to adapt, in order to stay relevant. And here's some things that I'm reading about and seeing. The fashion industry has been rocked, and yet we see fashion groups, face masks, creating comfortable clothes. A lot of the retail, both big box stores, malls, as well as small boutiques, they're hurting. So they're trying to be more relevant, trying to keep in front of people so they know who they are and remember what they do. Boutiques, creating comfort items, bundling of products, taking things that people may need now. Once again, what is that human factor, as Dave was talking about? How can we do things to help you when you're isolated and alone? Florists. The florist industry as a whole is hurting because wholesale florists are having trouble distributing and getting flowers out to people in the United States. But there are things that I'm seeing. I'm seeing and getting emails from florists for potted plants, for herbs, flowers to be planted as we all sort of homestead, and you see a lot of baking and you see people doing things that bring comfort. I'm also seeing spas. Instead of giving facials and giving out different products, they're creating hand sanitizers that with aromatherapy and special scents, and they're creating lotions that we often need after using alcohol to wipe our faces and hands 9 times a day. Professional services, a little trickier, and yet professional services is a huge part of San Diego, along with the public agency sector. There's a cleaners that I've noticed, and they don't have the staffing nor are they allowed to do laundry. So they can do dry cleaning. So they have a reduced price for dry cleaning. And if you have things that you normally would launder, they'll dry clean it for you at a pretty reasonable rate. Accounting. I've seen a lot of accountants and tax agencies consulting on COVID tax changes. This is a ever-changing landscape and can be difficult. Coming up with ways to stay in front of longtime customers. Community banks. I don't see this as much with the large banks because they're very busy trying to do the bailouts and the forgivable loans and things like that. But I do see community banks coming up with packages or messages for specific COVID relief products and services, things to help, things to make it easier to save money or access funds. Fitness trainers starting to now do online classes and workouts. Once again, this is a very personable, one-on-one type of relationship. It's difficult to maintain that, and they don't want people to forget them. And when we do ramp up, you want to make sure that maybe these are some of the first people you think about. Food. So with food, bars, I've noticed a lot offering and promoting specialty drinks, Friday night specials. Coffee shops, adapting their own products for pickup, relaxing teas, baked goods, special coffees like that. I'm actually blocking my own. Let me see if I can move this down. And then restaurants are doing interesting things, not only for takeout to keep themselves alive and to help the community, but there's an emphasis on comfort food and family meals. So people have access and they could spend a bit of money at a restaurant, maybe more than they normally would, but it feeds a whole family and maybe there's leftovers. So sometimes this happens concurrently, sometimes it happens independently with flipping the delivery system. So for retail, I think many of you have seen this. We see curbside pickup. Noticing museums and art galleries or curated types of businesses offering 3D websites to feature products, high content websites, more emails, interactive questionnaires, product sales versus services, advance orders. So and the reason I point out services is that we can't interact with people. So can you package a service? Can you provide it in such a way that I can access this or work with this from home? And then I'll get back to you later. At some point, I'll remember that you did this. And I'll remember that I miss you and I want to be a part of this business. Advance orders. I noticed a salon recently was taking advance orders for hair color, for facials, for haircuts. I thought that was pretty smart. I don't know what that does to maybe even help with their bank to show they've got some receivables, in the bag. And then COVID-centric products, and you'll see this along everything. Pay attention to what will the world be like? What will we be needing? What will be jettisoned? There will be a new normal that will be probably more trying and will slowly ease up on that. And there may be some things that will be changed forever. Professional services, obviously more Zoom meetings, much more phone conversations. People need to pick up the phone and talk more. It is hard. Zoom has a delayed reaction. It's harder to see. It's harder to talk. Pick up the phone, talk with people. Most people are pretty hungry for that. High content websites, you'll see that also across the board. So graphics, interactivity, curated. We need to do more with our websites because that's the first line of defense where people are going. More emails out, so talking, emails. For professional services, it might be nice to have interactive questionnaires, clean, simple, fast. Find out things of where you may have a niche or a place to open up as you move forward. Find out what they're thinking. Safe meeting protocols. Get that ready. Let people know that the second we're open, the second we're able, this is how I can meet with you. This is how we can move forward. Food, delivery systems. You know, how do we partner with a delivery service? And you see that with Instacart, you see it with other things, and sometimes not with the greatest efficacy, but I think it's got to be considered. I'm starting to see more branded food delivery. So a restaurant or of any kind is now starting to have cars or vans that they have slapped a vinyl that is their name and pictures of their food with some fun slogans and maybe something related to the COVID-19 issues that we face. I think that's fun and it keeps that in front of people and it's great advertising. Once again, the high content websites, more emails. I think we're all familiar with the curbside pickup. I have noticed some organizations making that curbside pickup more engaging. There's more of an experience with it where they'll actually decorate the trays, they'll decorate the tables, and maybe they'll give you a little something for free. Possibly curbside specialty foods. Picked up from an Italian restaurant recently. They were connected with an Italian grocery store, and so they were selling things next to each other. And it was just very easy to say, wow, I'm picking up my food and look at this basil olive oil. Partner with florists. Nothing says it better than flowers, and we got Mother's Day coming up. Maybe give flowers with the delivery. I shopped recently at a grocery store. It was a little stressful, a little tense. They gave me a bouquet of tulips at the end. I thought that was great. So considering new vertical markets. Many of the things that we're talking about, are they going to bring you back to profitability? Are they going to offset the loss or even the operations costs that you have now? Not always. You know, when we talk about a restaurant opening, but can only put in 25% capacity, but they have 100% of operations costs, you know, that's going to be a little bit of a curve in order to come back to profitability and grow that business. But we may need to be thinking of different ways to present business. So for retail, more personalized shoppers. That was something that was huge for years. It might be time for that to come back. More curated visual merchandising. I've noticed this more and more with some clothing stores and some lifestyle boutiques. They're actually putting things together. So I'm seeing visual merchandising online. Professional consultants in branded and co-branded products. Maybe if you sell certain products, create your own. Maybe see if you can slap a label on that so your name is out there and people see that you're responding to the community. How about a merger with a complementary service? What if you're a spa, but maybe you need yoga services? Or what if you're a small yoga studio, but you need to have some product there to get more people in and cross-sell? Big will be automating services without forsaking quality, and you'll see that all the way across. I think that's going to be huge as we move forward. There will be more and more of that. But at the same time, I also believe you'll see more and more human interaction. I think the isolation, I think being attached to our electronic leashes, whatever devices we have, I think people may be wanting to put their head up with that. Cleaning company. I noticed a cleaning company the other day who does offices and homes now offering to clean entrances for offices and medical buildings during COVID and as we come out of recovery. Insurance companies, maybe partner with a community bank, credit unions, accountants, create some sort of one-stop, make it easy for people to do in a way that's automating in person. And then with food, why not align with the specialty produce? Once again, why not have things that you sell right there? I think there's some restaurants even downtown that you walk in and as you're waiting to be seated, there's quite a few things you could buy. And it's a very easy way to, I'm already in a good mood, I want to be eating, I think I'll buy a few things to take home. I am seeing, and I'm sure you are too, some of the craft alcohol and beer, they're producing hand and spray sanitizers. Some of them say that this will continue to be a line for them. Partner with influencers for experiences. I've never seen so many influencers online in my life. Sometimes good, sometimes not good. But maybe find somebody that really follows what you do or follows your industry and see if they can talk you up legitimately and share what it is you have to offer. Offer retail, music, cooking classes. Provide a class. Do what we're doing today. So ultimately, it's a time for innovation. It's a time for adaptation. It's a time for perseverance. You know, we see the studies that 90+% of small businesses go under within the first 5 years. I don't think it's because people aren't brilliant. I don't think it's because they're not capable and smart, but it is a lot of work and you can get tired. And what I find that I'm doing as far as mentoring or talking to people is you're going to get weary. You're going to get tired. So carry on, try and push beyond that and try and adapt to the times. And in some cases you will. I think in some cases you do have to wonder, is my company viable in a post-pandemic world? That's important. If you have a party bus, it may be a while before you get back online. So definitely take a look at who you are and what you do and do a little forecasting. What do I think the trends are going to be? And there's a lot written about that. Also sit down and say, what does my recovery look like? Will I be more self-automated? Will I have all of my employees? Will they have different roles? Do I really enjoy what I'm doing? Is there a way to do it better? And then ultimately, what is my way forward? There's recovery, and then there's from there, that jumping off point. What do I do next? I don't know what you're doing, but I'm reading a lot, and I have been reading a lot of Winston Churchill. And I thought that this was great. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. And I think that if you're a small business owner, it's very courageous to take that leap and to continue that progress. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks, Marley. That was very, very insightful. I know from our end and some others that are out there, we have been partnering with craft distilleries to get more hand sanitizer in our branches that are open as a part of being an essential business. Having 14 branches open, you need to keep that sanitizer flowing. So, and I think I haven't seen any questions just yet, but one from this end is, where do you shop so that we can all get tulips at the end of that. All right, very good. Hey, thanks. With that, we're going to move over to Robert Bob Nance. He's been a digital marketer for over 20 years. And Bob's the owner of Push Marketing, a Carlsbad digital marketing agency that uses advertising, search traffic, and social media to help companies find, acquire, and retain customers. Bob's going to give us all some marketing tips and tricks in the age of social distancing. Welcome aboard, Bob.
Thank you very much, Todd. Hey, I think we've heard some great ideas from Marley, Dave, and Michael. So some great strategies, and I want to talk to you about some tactics. And the first one to start with is this church. I really love what they're doing, and they're adapting to what's happening, you know, in this current environment. They have a plan and they're moving forward with purpose. And that's what I want to talk to you about with some of these ideas today, give you some more tips. Okay, these are the things we're going to be talking about: how to market virtually, give you, again, some tips and tactics, how to generate demos. We're all talking face-to-face in Zoom, and how to generate those meetings. I'm going to give you some tools for better meetings, and I'm going to talk to you about making it easy to do business with your business by adding e-commerce to your website. So let's talk about some tips and tactics. First thing I want to mention, like Dave said, video is very important nowadays. In this scroll by world, you need to be using video. This is a tool that you can use. It's called Promo. You can use stock videos, which we're using here for our customer, or you can put in your custom videos, and it makes the graphics really easy to do for you to bring in video to your own social media. Another option that we use, this is called Dub. This is a software where you can videotape yourself and you can send an email to your customer or to your prospect to introduce yourself or just to follow up with them. Here's an example of, this is one that I sent to a customer. And it's nice because it has a little GIF in there, and it gives some movement, makes it interesting, right? And it also has one thing that I'd like to point out is down below in my email signature. Everyone should have a great email signature. And what I have in mind is so you can schedule a meeting with me. You can also have an instant Zoom meeting. I'll show you what that looks like here in a moment. And some of the other things that we offer, case studies. But just what is it that's important to your potential customer that you're talking to? You should have a really thorough email signature. I mentioned the Zoom meeting. This is really easy to add to everyone's site. You add this here, and then anyone can be on a Zoom call with you in 15 seconds. Just go to your web page, and everybody jumps onto that same Zoom meeting. They can also schedule a meeting. Go to your calendar. This is hooked up to my Google. This is Calendly, and you can go in and select a meeting with me. Everyone should have this on their signature. For me, it's case studies. My customers want to know that we have the experience to do the job. But for you, you might have whatever it is, that sales value proposition that's important to your customers. That's what you want to be presenting, and have a link to that in your email signature back so they can qualify your business. Another thing that we use video for, we do a monthly webinar. We take that webinar, take that video, and then we move that out to our social media channels. It's very powerful to build community and engagement. This is something that, that we're also doing, social introductions. So if you're dealing with B2B, then you can find your vertical market, people in your vertical market, connect with them using you can use a templated message. The same message, just changing the first name. Then after they connect, then you can have another message. And you can also tie this to the dub video that I mentioned earlier. So it can actually be a video that you're messaging to make contacts with, right? In a personal video. I wanted to point that out. So this could be done. And just to let everyone know, we have a template available that you can use for videos, and I can forward that to anyone who's interested in these social introduction templates. Marketing yourself now virtually. We all need to be on these. We have a great chamber, the regional connects. If you're missing those, you're missing out. We really need to make it a priority. Okay, how can we generate virtual demos and presentations? We market, our largest customer is a $1 billion surfaces company. I'm going to start with them. They send out an email that says, okay, come take a virtual showroom tour. They send out these emails weekly to their customers. They're keeping in constant communication. When you click on this link, it's going to take you to all of their 30 locations, and then you click into a single location, which we're doing here. I've highlighted. For additional information or to schedule a virtual visit, please contact us. And you can call, email, and they will talk to you and set up a virtual meeting. All these stores, by the way, are closed to the public. They're just getting ready to start opening up. This is one of our local customers, and similar type of message. They sell garage doors. Is it time for a new garage door? Call us for a virtual tour. So the email signature, sending out your emails, marketing on social media, great ways to generate those demos. Now let's talk about secrets. I think all of us have been adjusting to this new world where, we're having a lot of Zoom meetings. I'm going to talk about some things that I've discovered. I've tried the virtual backgrounds, and I see that it works well for some people, but it just really didn't fit, what I was trying to do. I tried standard, which is before, out of the box. This is a uploaded background that you can do in Zoom. Wasn't too crazy about that. I was talking to a customer, actually, I saw his setup, and what he has is he's taken a vinyl backdrop, and this is actually a printed on vinyl. It's wood, and what that's going to do, when you're looking at this on video, it looks like you're looking at beautiful wood paneling behind you. It's really a nice look. I've also seen this in brick, and I've seen this with library books behind. It's a great look. Now for me, My office is a little bit of my man cave, so I really didn't want to have this set up where I had to leave it up or take it down, put it up. I kind of want to be on all the time. So I had to go more with the natural look. Here's some of my natural look that I usually go with. I have another side of our office, my office here, that we're doing when we need to do webinars. We will use this side of the room. This is our videographer, Frank. I brought Frank into the discussion here, and I had a conference with him the other day, and I like what he's doing. Again, someone who just has a nice natural background. If your wife will let you take over the living room, my wife won't let me take over the living room. So, but I love what he has going here. Let's talk about lighting a little bit. This is a ring light, and how this works. If you want to put your tablet or your smartphone in the center, and then what it's going to do, it's going to remove all the shadows off of your face. Okay, so this works great. I've also seen people, it's not designed for this, but I've seen it just being used for regular lighting. My customer with the wood panels I mentioned earlier, he had his ring lights up there, and but it would work for that, but it's really made for this purpose. Now what we've done is we've added these this was recommended by a professional, and we've added these lights on the side here to give me some more light. It was a little bit, I was looking really dark and you really couldn't see what I looked like, so we decided to kind of brighten me up a little bit. Microphones, it's important that you have a good sound, okay? So as far as this is a microphone that we're using. It's called a Snowball. This is what I use, especially if I have like a conference type of a call. I've ordered a lapel microphone that unfortunately didn't make it in time for this call, but it's something that I'll be using in the future. And that's supposed to eliminate an extra sound around me. So it should be very helpful for these type of calls. This is my, our videographer who's a professional. This is what he's doing. So he has a high-end setup here, high-end camera. He's using the diffuse lights that he told me about. He's using the sound foam to kind of keep the sound in, right? And then, so he has, again, that high-end camera hooked up. And this is, it's nice, it's a little bit expensive. If money's not really an object, then it might be something that you might be interested in. I did price it out just in case someone was curious. We don't sell any of this. It's just, if you wanted to go out and buy it, then this is what you would budget. So your camera, microphone, you would get your lighting. You want to connect that camera, you have to connect it to your computer. You're going to need some sort of interface. And if you wanted that backdrop, like we talked about, it's around $100. So this is $2,800. My videographer told me that $2,000 is a little bit heavy. You could probably get that for around $1,000 and get this anywhere from the $1,500 to $1,800 if you really shop it. And if it's something that you're interested in. And just as a comparison, this is myself. We were on a call, and then he took a screenshot from his side. So you can see that I'm a little bit out of focus, definitely not as sharp. And you can definitely see the contrast between us. So just if it's something that you're interested in and you're going to be doing a lot of these meetings, you might want to consider it like I'm considering it. The last thing I'm going to talk to you about today is adding e-commerce to your business. E-commerce used to be very expensive. We used to charge thousands and thousands of dollars to an e-commerce site, but most people don't realize nowadays something that used to cost thousands of dollars now costs hundreds of dollars. Everyone understands that you can use e-commerce for physical products, but you can also use e-commerce if you're selling a digital product or something that's going to be downloaded or a course that you're going to be offering. Again, it's very easy to add to your website. Someone can do that for you in, you can have it up in a week and very low cost. What you would decide is, you need to set up shipping, or you're going to disable shipping because it's going to be a digital product. And then one of the other things that you can do, now we're talking about curbside service. It's very important now that everyone has that option to pick up, that you can add pickup option to your website. Very easy to do. People can pay for it. You can have someone waiting out front and they've selected a pickup option and it's there at the time they want to pick it up. And I believe, oh, almost at the end, I have this list of, these are the softwares that we use with the Dub I mentioned, Promo I mentioned earlier. We use, everything goes up to YouTube, and then we use Vimeo for our videos as well out to social media. We don't use YouTube for social media. If someone goes out to our YouTube page and you would watch one of our videos, it's automatically gonna, it's good chance it could go to one of our competitors. The same thing happens with your business. So that's the reason we use Vimeo for video. Vidyard is similar to Dub, you know, personal videos. And we use Zoom like all of us nowadays. And then for us, we're using GoToWebinar. If you would like any of these tools, please reach that I presented or a copy of my deck, reach out to the chamber, or you can find me online. I would be happy to help you with anything that I can provide that we've talked about today. And thank you very much. I think there's who I am. And with that, I will turn the meeting back. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Robert. Thank you. We'll take some questions if we handle the technology here and have a little round for Q&A. I think we've covered a lot of ground, from really learning about really trying to create stories that connect, grow and build our tribes, really leveraging some of the newest, latest and greatest things, not only in digital social media marketing, but some of those tactics and how to really rethink our business in a really different time. Robert, we have one question coming in. Where can we find that wood paneling background for Zoom?
Oh, that's easy. So there's a few places, but probably the easiest is just, I hate to say Amazon, as Marley, I think, was alluding to, but that's probably the easiest. There are some other another source that I've used to get some of my equipment that's also low cost, if you wanted to just spread it out a little bit, is a company called B&H. B as in boy, H as in Henry, and they're out of New York. And it's an online place that you can buy a lot of this type of equipment, backdrops, lighting, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think here's a question for either Robert or Dave. You know, if you're a small business with some limited resources, what's one thing that you'd out of everything that you've talked to us about, what's one thing you would really recommend as being critical?
That's it. Dave, I'll let you start. I have a couple, but I'll try to think if I can think of one.
I'm thinking about it too, because there's a lot on my mind.
I'll start and you can come back if you like.
Yeah, I'll come back to me. Yeah.
Sure. As far as one thing that's as far as you need something instant, then it would be probably Google paid search is probably like the quickest thing that we can get going. You can get going, or you can do that on your own if you want. You set up Google paid search. Search optimization is a similar cost, but it takes a little bit longer. Something like that, search optimization is going to last you a long time, and you're going to make a lot of, you have a big ROI on SEO, but it's not good in the short term. Where PPC is, social media somewhere in the middle. Social media marketing is great as well. One of those three, it's hard to choose. I would probably have to go with PPC if you twist my arm.
All right, Dave, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think what I would say about that, it kind of came to me as Robert was talking, is it depends on your industry, I'd say. I think one of the mistakes that I see small businesses make, especially, and some big businesses and organizations make it too, is they try and go everywhere. They're on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. And it's just, there's not enough hours in the day to do it all, especially since some of these platforms may be better for your market than others. So if you're a restaurant, obviously you want to be participating on Yelp, but Instagram is probably good. If you're B2B, probably be involved with LinkedIn. If you're video heavy, obviously Vimeo or YouTube, and you can do video, of course, on Instagram. It's more about what audience you're trying to reach that's appropriate for your industry. So I don't want to say that there's one magic bullet for all of them. It's like, find the one that seems best for your industry, where your customers, I mean, certain things just play well on certain platforms. Like if you're a lawyer, you're probably not going to play as well in terms of the kind of content you could produce on Facebook and Instagram as a restaurant could. That's just, you know, but it all depends on industry. So you have to do a little bit of brainstorming or research, but find the thing that's right for you and just start with one and grow from there, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, as I start, you talked about content, and I go back, Dave, trying to tie knots between Dave and Marley, what a couple of you guys were saying. One, Dave, I think really the theme, if I got one out of your content, was, you know, what's in it for me? Just that old school, what's in it for me? And Marley, as you were talking about kind of going through industry segments, I know in my industry for finance, with some of the troubles people are doing, yeah, bridging those gaps. Dave showed this long email. We've had several in our industry come out and go, hey, here's 7 things we're doing for you. And I think, is that more the approach you're trying to talk through?
I think, you know, it's a balancing act, isn't it? We don't want to look opportunistic and we don't want to look manipulative. And you certainly don't want to look desperate. I think you flip it around, take advantage of these things. Maybe don't even say I'm doing for you. Speak to the totality of the times and say, here's 7 things that you might want to take advantage of during this time. I find myself, I don't want to say equivocating, but using softer language. You may be interested in this. You know, if you find this of use during this time, please take advantage. Where normally I do probably a harder sell or kind of the buy and sell language.
Yeah, I think too, as we go, Michael, you talked a lot about, when you talk about language and message and stories in market, you mentioned, yeah, we've seen a lot of companies come out and it's this we're in it together message. And there's a bit of a backlash. I saw a YouTube video where they put together all of the basically the same ad that everyone in every industry is doing. And now you're seeing a backlash online with those we're in it together messages. Question, when do you see, do you see that tone changing? And when do you see that tone changing? And what do you think that looks like moving forward?
Right. So I do think that it's really important to be able to offer proof points that demonstrate how you are committed to others, to supporting other people. And again, not making it about yourself, your own company, but about what you are doing for others, whether it's giving away advice, product, service, supporting healthcare workers, your own employees, just really providing examples of how you're walking the talk. And if you don't have those examples at this point, after 7-8 weeks, then that's really not the right message for you. A cornerstone of public relations is that when you make an assertion, you must be able to support it with proof points. And being this far in, that certainly is an expectation. And those proof points do make good stories. I mentioned the family-owned business in Santa Barbara, and they are now sharing these examples of how they're serving others, serving their community, with these stories, providing meals to healthcare workers and such. And the tone is not, look what we did. It's about the healthcare workers, and they happen to mention, the fresh, tasty, healthy meal that was provided to them.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that can be said. I think to your presentation, Michael, of connection and making a difference for consumers, for the community, for the folks that are all there during this time. I think that says a lot, especially when it's selfless in terms of the community. I know we're not futurists, nor do we play one on TV. But I guess one question I'd ask all of us is, as we're looking at this, is fundamentally, I mean, most of us are in hibernation. It's changing the way we're living day to day. What types of behaviors do you foresee changing in a post-COVID world as we move through and out of whatever phase we're in today to whichever phase we're going tomorrow. And how do we see that affecting business and small business in particular?
I think I'm going to jump in and suggest it's a great question. I would suggest looking at this slightly differently, and perhaps others have direct answers to that question. I think I would ask the question in terms of what stories do we want told about us, about our companies, our organizations 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, right? And so our words, our actions, our deeds need to be informed by what we want others to say about us later, that we behaved well and honorably. Those are things that we can control, what we do, what we say. So I think if that informs how we go about doing things, it might adjust what people actually do, what they actually say, if we think of it in terms of a legacy or a longer term. At the port, for example, one of our primary objectives is to lay no one off. And so that informs the projects we do, how we're spending money. And if people are, we say that we put people first, that we're a human-centered organization, a people-centered, others-focused organization. So that informs our actions.
Yeah, Robert, you had something I think you wanted
Yeah,
to say?
it was a conversation that I had, and just some things that I've observed, and was talking to, and I think it kind of illustrates the point. I was talking to a customer of mine. He used to have, it was all face-to-face meetings, and everything was face-to-face. There's a customer that was using the wood panel, right? And so he's doing everything Zoom. And he said, you know what? I'll be surprised if he knows he's going to be doing Zoom. He used to not do any Zoom. Now he's decided his business, even as this is over, he's going to be 90% Zoom. So I think there's going to be less of us. And I'm kind of having the same, the same thoughts as far as, we would always drive down, and because most people didn't have the technology, weren't used to doing this, right? But now everybody's, all the business people that you're dealing with, they've all been on a Zoom call now, no reason. It's real easy to jump on so we can have these kind of conversations. And, much as I love driving San Diego freeways, if I could get off that for, an hour each way, that'd be great, right?
Yeah.
And then one other thing that I think that's going to happen here is there's going to be, unfortunately, I think there's going to be, people are going to be, another change that's going to happen besides that is people are going to be working more from home. And I think, if you're in, I'm a little concerned for commercial real estate, actually, at least in the short term. Hopefully long term it's going to be fine. But there could be a little bit of a contraction there. And that was something else that I wanted to say.
Yeah, I know that we're expecting a short-term contraction in that real estate market too, and construction. But the Monday morning commute to the airports may be lighter as we continue to go on. A couple questions that have come in. One is general, thank you for presenting to all of you. The presentations will be available for later reference, and we will be posting the video on YouTube and social media channels and the website. Robert, Eileen asks, she loves the option of using Dove to send personalized videos to potential prospects, clients. Do you have an example of videos you've used and which have received the most responses?
It's, it's a little bit, tricky to which one. I could probably look to find a couple that have worked, but they were basically, the message was very simple. It's very similar. So if I send you one, you would see even the one that worked and the one that didn't work. It's a little bit like we're doing it. It's somewhat of, I don't want to say it's a template, but we're personalizing a template. And I'm happy to send a Dove video, along to anyone that would like to take a look at an example. So if I have an email, I can, it's easy to forward or however that works. If she wants to post her email, I could just pop one of those off to her.
And she just did. So
okay, perfect.
I'll make sure to get that to you, Robert.
Sure, I have it. I'll see if I can copy it. Yeah, I have it.
Okay. Carolyn asks, what do you recommend adding to the business website positively about COVID-19?
And I'm just copying Eileen's email there.
Okay,
And
great.
something adding positively. Anyone else have anything on that positively?
Yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of different perspective. I'm doing a lot of work right now with aging independence for the county and mental health systems for the state of California. There is great concern about isolation, and there will be a lot of mental health and social adjustments after all of this. It's happening now. So one of the things that we spend a lot of time talking about is, yes, we'll probably have more Zoom meetings. Is that the way to interact with people? No, it's not optimal. There's all kinds of psychology behind it and why we need to interact with people. And there's been concern for years about younger people, the quote unquote millennials, not having the skills to converse and be involved in person and relying on devices. I'm guilty of it as well. Yeah, the thing that we all hope for, and when I listen to them talk, is maybe greater socialization, maybe more getting outside, maybe more in getting involved in the community. And is there a way to facilitate that and make that happen? We're going to hit 25% seniors in San Diego in the next 10 years. That's huge. So those services are going to be needed, and that's a population that often feels isolated. So there are people studying this, and I agree with Robert. I too worry about commercial buildings, leasing, real estate. I worry about malls. They've been in decline for a while, big box stores, maybe an anathema to small business. However, they employ so many people and so many entry-level people. So what are we going to do with that? How can we re-energize our malls and large stores?
Yeah, those are really great points, Marley. And Robert, thanks for getting back to Kellen on that video. Anyone else on to piggyback on what Marley was saying?
Another thought, this is again something that the family-owned seafood business in Santa Barbara has done, is so they started as a small business, 30 years ago, and it's not so small, and I think they've really never wanted to be perceived as a small family-owned business, and so something just as a friend that I suggested they do is really put human faces on the business. And so as part of their COVID messaging, there's a photo of the family, and it talks about how they launched the business in, I think it was '83, and how they're really a part of the community, and they've been impacted as has everyone else, and they're committed to supporting their employees and the community, and then they again they have the proof points of how they're doing that. So it's it's a positive message that ultimately is about creating connection, not just between a company, but between people to people. So they put a human face on the company, which ultimately all of this is about connection. No matter how small or how large a company is, ultimately it's about creating connections, creating emotions with our clients and prospective clients. We want to, through marketing, elicit some kind of connection, some kind of feeling from the prospects. And it's got to be the right emotion, right? So again, it's not woe is us or things are so bad. Everyone is having challenges now, so it's connections that are uplifting and motivational and positive, optimistic.
I'm reminded of something an ex-business partner used to tell me back in the old days, okay? Sing like you don't need the money. As far as, really what we need to be, as far as you want to put a positive light out, I think, if hey, we're opening, there hasn't been a lot of positive things to talk about here over the last couple of months, right? But now things are going to start opening back up. But if you're opening, hey, we're open. That's something that, you can celebrate. You can celebrate that on social media. You should be celebrating that on your website, some sort of messaging. Another thing that our large customers doing is, so we're putting everything out, a big social media presence, especially Instagram's going crazy for products. So then we're taking their Instagram feed, and they have multiple followers, and they're being tagged all over the place. Their products being tagged, and they want to add that to the website. So I could see that's something you could add in if you're doing some positive things on social media. Some of the things some great ideas that this team is talking about that you're doing on social media, and then bringing that into your website, right? Some of this messages, right?
Right.
It would be
You
positive.
know, yeah, and a distinction I would make is between, you know, positivism and optimism. So things that are, you know, positive may ring hollow. Again, the message has to be crafted carefully. So I would suggest that people have messaging, you know, that's optimistic perhaps rather than, you know, positive. There's, you know, there is a distinction to be made there.
Good.
I think, you know,
Michael,
is always called for.
Michael, I was going to say that you actually have an incredibly positive message that you just shared, but I don't know if people are aware of this, but public agencies, cities, municipalities, hospitals are really, really struggling. And they are going to see reduced revenues from whatever form that they come in. And the fact that the Port of San Diego is working to keep that human connection and keep people employed, that's a very reinforcing message. I mean, that's human-centric.
Can I jump back to
Our
one?
business here in San Diego are public agencies.
Yeah, Dave, you had a thought there.
I want to jump back to one thing. It's kind of slightly veering off what we were just talking about. And I think, Marley, what you just said is really true. I mean, looking at schools and universities, local city governments as well, this pain is going to really be there for those kind of public agencies for sure. A separate topic we were just talking about is this whole thing of, you know, real or physical world versus digital world, and it will be zooming more in the physical world. I think one thing that I've been feeling for a while is that we need to stop a little bit with the distinction between, a lot of people say digital versus real world. Well, first I can assure you they're both quite real, you know, got tongue tied there. They're both quite real, okay? But I think the better nomenclature for the real world is the physical world. There is a difference between the two. I mean, we have to admit it. Marley alluded to it. I've read some articles in the last week. I've been Zooming and FaceTiming more, mainly just for personal reasons with friends. And I'm tired. I am not liking it. I'd rather just be on the phone. And I read an article about it, this kind of physiologically, sociologically, our brains are constantly looking, like 75% of communication is nonverbal. We're looking for that body language. And when you've got the Brady Bunch array up on the screen of 9 faces to look at, you don't know who to focus on at once. You can't get all the visual cues that you normally do. And so I think it depends on your market and the world of, say, commercial real estate and white collar jobs, so to speak. Yeah, I think people do need to be allowed to telecommute if that's what works best for them in their lives. But in terms of restaurants and bars and community gathering places, man, when this is over, I think there's going to be a party. Like, people are going to want to go and socialize with each other like never before. I think in some ways we're going to return to our roots almost and ditch these devices. And they're going to want physical world experiences that started, though, first with the digital device, because you learned about it through your iMessage or your Facebook Messenger or whatever, through your friends. So I've kind of been for a while, even prior to COVID-19, feeling that there's this digital backlash happening. And part of it's because of the privacy violations that have happened over the last few years at the hands of certain social networks. I'm seeing friends not posting to social media anymore. They just want to be meeting up in the physical world with friends, and they can't right now. But when this is over, that pent-up demand will be there. And if restaurants and any other kind of B2C physical world type businesses can pivot a little or a lot to make that experience even better, even more seamless, even more inviting, I think they could win big after this is all over with.
I hope you're right.
I do too, because it's hard in the meantime. That's the problem, is a lot of what we're talking about today this is a great session. All the advice I think that everybody gave is great, but a lot of these are long-term plays, just given the reality of the situation right now. Some are short-term, obviously, but some may not work until we're through this, whenever that is. So.
Hey, Todd, I think we have time for one more question, and then we need to do a wrap. But I think I just saw one come in.
We just had one more come in, and it says, speaking to body language, what is a good way to interact with customers while wearing a mask and gloves?
I know that's something, and once again, I'm learning from the experts, but in particular with the County of San Diego. My husband works at UC San Diego Health. He's there 10, 11 hours a day. One of the things they're really stressing, there is no good way, by the way, to really communicate with a mask and gloves, and in some cases a hat. But what they really stress is more prolonged eye contact, and try and keep and allow a smile to show in your eyes. So it is holding the eye gaze a little bit longer. It's making sure that you're really looking at someone and trying not to look away as much. But it's hard. It's really not optimal. Somebody said I'm smiling under here with their
Yeah,
mask
I'm
on.
smiling at her.
I like that.
That's
One of-
great.
One of the things that I can add on a personal note is that I'm finding that the actual human discussion that happens is more meaningful, or at least feels a little more meaningful, even though behind the mask, it's usually at the checkout, did you find everything, right? And you're like, yeah, whatever. And you're like, hey, did you get everything you needed today? And just that little change means quite a bit. And I find in those instances that myself included and others, we're thanking people a little bit more. And it just gives it a little bit more of that personal connection, even though we're behind masks.
Well, I want to go ahead and wrap up. It's 2:27, and out of respect for everybody's time, I want to thank all of our panelists and our moderator, Todd. And I do want to reiterate one thing, and that is personal messages go a long way, because I know I send them out quite often, and I find that if they're business related, you don't get as much traction on it, because I know people respond. But if they're personal and you make them personal, you're going to get messages back. So thank you for all of the advice, everybody. I really appreciate it. And I just want to thank you all for your support of the Chamber, and wish you a great week and stay inspired. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Deborah.
Thanks, Deborah.
Thank
Todd,
you.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
See y'all
Bye. Thank
later.
you.
Bye.